Did you hear? We might not have to hire Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck after all, and that's always a good thing. So we'll talk about it in just a second. Hey, thanks for being with me. I'm Lucas Kitchen, and this is More to the Story. If you're on podcast platforms, I would encourage you to leave us a review if you like the show. It really helps us get the word out. Same with video platforms. You can subscribe and get notifications. You can go to freegrace.in and get email notifications about our next shows and all of that kind of stuff. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. Now, what's all this business about Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck? Well, do you remember the 1998 movie called Armageddon? In that movie, there was this massive asteroid barreling toward the Earth, and the only hope for humanity was to send Ben Affleck and Bruce Willis and some other guys up to blow it up. Well, as neat of a plan as that is, that would be really expensive, just because those guys get like $1 million a day for a movie. Maybe there's a cheaper way. Maybe there's a robotic way. NASA has been working on that. Have you heard of their DART mission? Well, that's what it's all about, is trying to redirect the path of asteroids. Now, Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck made a big mistake in Armageddon, and here's what it is. They thought that what you'd want to do is blow up an asteroid, but the problem with that is that if you blow up an asteroid in mid-flight as it's flying toward the Earth, then it breaks into like 1 million little pieces, and then you no longer have one massive asteroid coming at you. You have 1 million, and it's really bad. Maybe they get burned up in the atmosphere if they're small enough, but man, if you do the equation, it's still this same amount of energy coming. It's just not a good thing. So what NASA engineers have been working on is trying to figure out a way to move asteroids. I don't know if you're familiar with the sci-fi ideas behind this, but this is something sci-fi has been playing with for a long time, and NASA is now trying to do the exact thing. What's their method? Well, it's pretty lo-fi at this point. So what they've done is they've created a fairly small space probe, basically about the size of a refrigerator or a vending machine, something like that. But they've added a lot of energy to it by getting it going really fast relative to the target. This thing is moving at 14,000 miles an hour relative to its collision target. You caught that right. I said its collision target. So not too far from Earth, there's this dyad pair of asteroids. One is orbiting the other. So the one is sort of like a miniature moon, sometimes called a moonlet, and it's called Dimorphos. The bigger asteroid is called Didymus, which means twin in Greek. I thought that was kind of cool. So their idea is to get their DART probe, and I think it's meaningful that it's called DART. That's an acronym, but it's also like a big lawn dart that they're firing at Dimorphos, the asteroid. So they get it up to 14,000 miles an hour, and the point is just to smash it into that asteroid, hoping that it will change trajectory. Now, before you get worried and say, what is this asteroid coming towards Earth? No, it's not. This is an experiment. They picked this asteroid specifically because we can get to it pretty quick with the probe, but also because it's orbiting a larger asteroid, it's pretty safe to adjust its trajectory. And so they've smashed this probe into the asteroid, and over the next 6 months or a year, they're going to examine its path to see if it worked. And if it did, that tells us that it is possible to redirect asteroids. Now, I've got a video clip. If you're listening on podcast, you'll still be able to get a sense. I'll kind of talk us through it, but if you're watching on video, this came directly from NASA. They live streamed it yesterday, so let's take a look. So here in the video, I've sped it up so that we can, because this was, even though it's moving 14,000 miles an hour, it took a while. Now here is the asteroid. We're getting really close to strike. Now you'll notice that on the screen it says impact. That means they lost signal. And then you see, one of the things I love about this is just to see how excited the team is. They've been working on this for years and years. This is the day that they finally get to see their creation, so to speak, come to life. Although it's come to life already, but Actually, this is the day they kill their creation. It smashes into, well, anyway, you get the metaphor. So how cool is that, man? I mean, I love what NASA's doing, even though some of their programs move a little bit slowly. It's still really awesome, the things that they're experimenting and trying. Now, I was trying to think, you know, if you're listening to the show, it's a show that's half about what's going on in the world, but also half about what's going on for believers in our Christian life. And I thought this is kind of an interesting metaphor for a certain concept that it's been kind of bouncing around in my head. So thinking about the motion of that heavenly body. It has a certain trajectory. Dimorphos was going along in its orbit around Didymus, and it was just, I guess, happy, just doing its thing, and then something came along and smashed into it to change its direction. And that made me think about the way that we, as people, as spiritual beings, are sort of following a certain path through this world. It's interesting to me what Proverbs says on this subject. For your ways are in full view of the Lord, and He examines all your paths. So whatever path you're taking through this dark and broken world, the Lord is aware of it. God is watching what you're doing. He sees your path. And like that little asteroid, you have a specific path. And if nothing happens to you, if nothing comes along to change your path, you'll just stay on that path. Now, note what Jesus said in Revelation. He said, "Those whom I love, I rebuke and discipline. So be earnest and repent." Now, it's worth mentioning that when Jesus says this, He's talking to believers. So He's talking to people who already are saved, and He wants them to get back on the path of godliness or righteousness. They can't lose their salvation, but they certainly can lose time and just disobedience. And so He is telling them, if you don't get back on the path, if you don't get on the trajectory that I want you on, I'm going to discipline you. Now, that may leave you wondering, well, what does God's discipline look like? Well, honestly, it's not so different from what happened to Dimorphos, that asteroid. Just going along, it's minding its own business, and then boom, something from Earth smashes into it. Well, in our lives, God doesn't use space probes to redirect our paths, but He uses circumstances, and those circumstances slam into us at high speed, and they change the trajectory that we're going. I'll give you an example. I've talked about it a little bit on a previous show, but I recently got sick, and I was kind of struggling with a couple of things. I was kind of feeling grumpy about some things, kind of resisting something that I knew would be really good for me to do, having to do with my spiritual life and church, but I was just sort of resisting it. And then I got sick, and it was like this circumstance slammed into me, and it helped me to realign my thinking. Now, was that God making me sick so that I would repent or relent? I don't know. I don't know how we'd ever even know that unless He told us directly. But whatever the case is, it made me do that. It sort of automatically, just because of this, the way suffering works, you can either resist becoming soft when suffering comes, or you can give in. You can let your heart be softened. And for me, that's just where I happened to be. I didn't resist it. I was just like, you know what? That stuff I was thinking about, I should relent on that. I should give in to that. And so, do I identify that as Jesus' discipline? I don't know, but it's definitely a circumstance that He used to discipline me, to get me back on the path. And so, I thought that was an apt metaphor for that, for the space mission that happened, which is so huge, such a big deal. So that's my thought for you for today. Hopefully that will allow you to, consider what is going on in your life and how God might use it to get you where you need to be. Well, thanks for being with me. I'll be back with you soon.